Well, here we are. Tomorrow is going to be Legacy of the North's first ever Winter Invitational, and here I am recording introductions for the last Legacy event. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, check out the announcement video. I'll probably put like a card up here that will take you directly to it. 600 subs, we're going to do a giveaway, and then 1,000 subs, we're going to do a bigger giveaway. And if you haven't watched any of the videos before this, apologies for the glare. Because of the invitational tomorrow, I won't have enough time to put up the digital cards, so hopefully it's not too bad for these next 3 videos. Enjoy the top 8! Okie dokie! We are here for the finals of the Legacy side event at the face-to-face Tour Toronto stop that happened January 13th. It is the finals. If you've made it this far, it is Jaime on Dimir Death Shadow on player 1 side, playing against Jim Monolith, always piloting his Mud Stompy deck list. So here we are. These are untimed rounds, so I'm sure that you guys see the length of the YouTube video. I have no idea how long it's going to be. We might be here for a while. The judge has reminded them to be playing at a reasonable pace. So, he are starting. Jaime looking at a Street Wraith, Reanimate. Looks like there's a Wasteland, and then a few cantrips. Looks like there's 2 Ponders, and that might be a Verdant Catacombs, actually. Alright, let's see if we can kind of get a glimpse at Jim's hand. Jim's hand just gonna ship it. Totally fine. So, Jaime looks like he is keeping his 7. He is going to be on the play. He is the higher seed. I believe that Jim was in 7th place and Jaime was in 3rd. Jim going to be looking at his 6. He's going down to 5. So for those of you who do not know and are kind of new to Legacy, the Death Shadow list definitely plays the sub game, or definitely includes the sub strategy of Dimir Scam, where it can grief away opponents' cards and then just reanimate them. Not sure if that's what you want to be doing, or I'm not sure if going down to 5 is what you want to be doing against this deck list. But if you have unplayable hands, then you got to do what you got to do. Jim definitely an expert at his list, knows what he's doing. So if he has to go to 5, he must go to 5. Looks like he's going to keep a Mox Diamond. I think that was the one card he was contemplating on keeping. Jaime is going to be starting us off. He's gonna cycle a Street Wraith, go down to 18. There is a new card, Stalactite Stalker. It is a 1-drop 1/1. Basically, what's the... I think it's Descend or Descended. It's basically Revolt. If I guess it's not Revolt. Revolt is if any permanent left the battlefield, whereas whatever the Ixalan mechanic is, it has to go to the graveyard. But it's basically whenever a card is put from the battlefield into the graveyard from your side, at the end of the turn, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and then it has like a 3rd activated ability. I'll throw it up on the screen so you guys know what it is, but I don't think the 3rd ability has come into play yet. It's just a 1-mana 1/1 that grows, and it does have menace, which is a big deal. All right, Jaime going to cast a Ponder, sees double Street Wraith into Grief. Grief is not a terrible option here. He does have a Reanimate in hand, but does he have another black card to exile to the Grief? Sorry for my stuttering. All right, exiling a Dismember to cast the Grief. There's from Jim's side, there's a Sphere of Resistance, Lodestone Golem, Counter of Souls, and City of Traders. So Jaime can strip away both the Lodestone Golem and the Sphere of Resistance here, and just leave Jim with plenty of mana. All right, Jaime gonna reanimate the Grief. Should put him down to 11 because I think he hasn't counted the fetch. All right, and he's gonna swing in for 2 damage. And because Jaime fetched, the Stalactite Stalker will grow into a 3/3 at the end of the turn. Jim looks like he's doing something with his mana. Top decks a Mystic Forge. It is going to resolve. Jim takes a peek at the top card of his library. Looks like there's something that he can cast. Generates 3 mana from the Grim Monolith. Casts a Shadow Spear. Going to activate the Mystic Forge. Gets rid of the Wasteland off the top. Loses 1 life to do so. Is there anything else he can cast? Looks like there might be just another land on the top of his library. 2 mana goes away. Grim Monolith is going to take a while to untap, otherwise, unless he finds a key. Jaime going to untap for his turn and draw. Looks like it's a Wasteland. Pretty good. Can strip him off of the Ancient Tomb. Going to cast a Ponder as the first action of the turn. There's a Force of Will, Daze, and Watery Grave. Jaime going to stack it so that he takes a Daze. Going to Wasteland, Ancient Tomb, just like we called it. And swinging in for 6. Brings Jim down to 7. Going to pass the turn. Jim in a lot of pressure here. Puts him down to lethal range. Gets rid of the Wasteland. Looks at the top card, draws it, and going to the next game. So, Jaime, in a very commanding fashion, takes it over Jim in game 1 here in the finals. Okie dokie, here we are in game 2. Jim Monolith going to be on the play here as player 2. Jaime going to be taking second. So Jim looking at Cavern of Souls, Lotus Petal, Lodestone Golem, Chalice, Urza Saga. Looks like there's a Leyline of the Void as well. Jaime gave the okay, so now pre-game effects, Jim is going to reveal the Leyline of the Void, and it's going to begin on the battlefield. Starting off with Cavern of Souls. Cast a Mox Opal, Lotus Petal, looking like a Storm Start. Going to use 2 mana, cast a Chalice on 1. Here's going to be a Force of Will from Jaime. Goes down to 19. So the Cavern of Souls is naming Golem. Jaime going to crack the Polluted Delta. Hopefully we're going to get these life totals updated. Alrighty, so he is at 16. 1 point of life from the Force of Will, 1 point of life from the Polluted Delta, and then 2 points of life from the Watery Grave. So yes, just so you guys know, the Cavern of Souls is going to be naming Golem. I'll probably put some kind of digital signature up on the screen after we do the voiceover. But Jim going to try to cast a Sphere of Resistance. Pretty good against a Death Shadow deck that kind of tries to... It's like similar to Delver and like the Dimir scam list, where it tries to operate on kind of a few number of lands. So trying to stack them out of the game is a pretty decent strategy. But this Leyline of the Void seems to be doing a lot of work. Down comes another Watery Grave, bringing Jaime down to 13. Going to play the Stalactite Stalker. Does not trigger because these cards are being exiled instead of going to the graveyard. Jim not drawing another mana source, just upticking the Urza Saga and then passing back. Jaime going to top deck a Brainstorm for the turn. Going to cast it for 2 mana. Draws Polluted Delta, Brainstorm, Flooded Strand. Looks like there's a couple of... I think those are Orcish Bowmasters, which are pretty hard to cast nowadays, or right now at least, with this Sphere Resistance on the board. Stalactite Stalker going to come in for 1, chip Jim down to 19. And I think... Is he going to shuffle away? Wow, is that a 3rd Orcish Bowmaster in his hand? Jaime going to find another Water Grave? Did I say another? Another Watery Grave. So Urza Saga gonna tick up, gonna generate 1 mana, 1 colorless mana. And now we're going to try to resolve the tutor. or the third chapter of the Urza Saga ability. So you can find any artifact that has exact cost of 1 colorless or 0 colorless. It must be those exact values if you do not know the powerful Urza Saga. A lot of people try to get like an Esper Sentinel. That's not a legal search. It must be 1 generic mana or 1 colorless mana, I believe. Actually, I'm not sure if there's an artifact that has just a generic mana, or not the generic, the colorless mana cost. I'm curious as to what Jim might be searching for. I wonder if he has something that can kind of apply a little bit of pressure. I guess he's just happy to find a. Maybe he's looking for a second mana source. He lost his mana source from Urza Saga. He hasn't played another mana source since the Urza Saga, and his Mox Opal is still turned off. But it will be turned on after he searches for this artifact. So it is going to be a manifold key. So if Jim is able to find a Grim Monolith, then that could be an answer to his mana problems. How are we going to progress? There is a Wasteland. Tapping the Mox Opal for mana, using 1 floating, and Cavern of Souls and Wasteland, so that's 4 mana. Down comes a Foundry Inspector, so it is 3 mana. It is a 3 mana 3/2, but he has to pay 1 extra because of the Sphere of Resistance. But because he now has the Foundry Inspector, the Sphere of Resistance doesn't really affect his artifact spells. So, taxing Jaime's spells for 1, not taxing Jim's artifact spells. There's a Polluted Delta. Tapping 2 Water Graves for another Brainstorm. I'm going to draw Death Shadow, Bowmaster, Bowmaster. I think he's going to be putting back 2 Bowmasters. Ooh, I think it's a Bowmaster and then some. I think it's a land that he shipped away. Jaime gonna attack for 1 again, I think. And going to fetch, bringing him down to 7. Finds a Water Grave. Going to tap 2 for the Death Shadow. So this Death Shadow is a 6/6. So Jaime has to be very careful because of this manifold key. A lot of people forget that it does have that second line of text where I think it's like pay 3 mana and then you can make a creature unblockable. Alright, so Jim has an Ancient Tomb now, tapping the Mox Opal. So this is 4 mana. Last card in his hand is a Lodestone Golem. So now Jaime's non-artifact spells are being taxed for 2. And everything, his artifact spells are being taxed for 1, and then Jim is unaffected. Well, he is affected, but almost all of his cards are artifacts, so largely unaffected by the Lodestone Golem. It's gonna be kind of rough now that Ponders, Brainstorms, even Death Shadows, everything costs 2 more? Yeah, 2 more. Like, these Bowmasters are 4 mana each. Alright, Jaime going into the red zone. Going to declare attacks for 7. So now Jim has to be wondering, like, why would he do such a thing? Like, he has to know that Jaime has creatures in his hand. So Jaime does have 2 Orcish Bowmasters, a Wasteland, and I think it's a second Death Shadow. But Jim has to know that he has to have some sort of creature that's 1 or 2 mana. So it's going to be either another Stalactite Stalker, another Death Shadow, or it could be Orcish Bowmasters. And we think this because Jim has 8 power on board, 5 from the Lodestone, 3 from the Foundry Inspector. So there's no reason for Jaime to be swinging with both if he can put up some sort of defense. Bowmaster is probably like the best defense because it creates 2 bodies. You can block the Lodestone and the Foundry Inspector. You even kill the Foundry Inspector as well. But Jim's just going to take the 6. Doesn't feel like blocking the Stalactite Stalker, because if Jaime does have the Bowmaster, then it's gonna kill. Although he could block with the Lodestone Golem. If Jim blocked with the Lodestone Golem, like, one Orcish Bowmaster isn't enough to kill it. Alright, Jaime gonna cast a Death Shadow here. Just to put up a defense. Jim gonna untap and draw for turn. So, because of this second Death Shadow, it's really hard for Jim to rely on the Manifold Key. He has to have some way of pushing through 2 points of damage, because if he's able to make the Lodestone Golem unblockable, that's 5 points of damage. He just needs to find a way to deal 2 more. Unfortunately, because of this Death Shadow, he can't swing with the Foundry Inspector. I mean, he would be able to swing with the Foundry Inspector anyway, because, Jaime wouldn't have attacked the way that he did if he didn't have a way to deal with one of the 2 creatures. Jim flashes card. I'm pretty sure it is a Sculpting Steel. So with a Sculpting Steel, he can have it enter as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield. The best choice, now that Jaime's gotten rid of the Ancient Tomb, like, if there's an Ancient Tomb, Jim would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. If Jim had one more turn and didn't get Wastelanded, then he could top deck 1 point of mana and then Sculpting Steel into a second Manifold Key and make 2 things unblockable and win the game. But that's not the case. It looks like he's just gonna copy a Lodestone Golem. Like, that's probably the best choice because it puts more power onto the board and it gives him an additional powerful blocker. It's really awkward though, because Jaime's Death Shadows are like 1 point shy or 1 point over trading with the Lodestone. So he has to, because they have lower toughness, Jim has to commit 2 of his guys to kill the Death Shadow, which is not what he wants to be doing now that there's 2 of them. But now, the Bowmasters in Jaime's hands are basically uncastable until he finds another mana source. All of Jaime's cards are being taxed by 3. There is a Ponder Jaime drew for turn. This is awkward. If he swings with both of the Death Shadows, Jim has to block 1. He goes down to 3. But then Jim is just in a position where he just can't win. I think what might have needed to happen was Jim make his Lodestone Golem unblockable last turn. But he's at 9. He can't do that either, because then his Death Shadow grows. His Death Shadow would be an 11/11, and he can't block both of them. Yeah, this is not a winning position for Jim. Like, it's very hard. If it wasn't for the second Death Shadow, if Jaime chose to play the Orcish Bowmasters instead of the Death Shadow, then Jim would have a lot easier time of winning, because he could have done the double unblockable plan. But now he has to commit sacrificing one of his creatures to this Death Shadow, and it's most likely going to be a Lodestone Golem. Like, he doesn't want to tax himself from the Foundry Inspector, even though it's probably not going to have that much of an impact. But he can only attack with one of the Lodestone Golems effectively, so there's no reason to keep the second one around. I mean, I guess technically, if he blocks with the Foundry Inspector... Oh no. If he blocks with the Foundry Inspector and he top decks a card that costs 3 mana, he won't be able to cast it because of the Sphere of Resistance. So he has to keep the Foundry Inspector around. Yeah, okay, so Jim has to take one of the shadow hits. And there's no way for him to double block, because if he double blocks, he gets rid of 1 shadow, and 1 shadow still lives. Having these Death Shadows in as a 6/6 is it's so awkward for Jim. Oh Jesus Christ, that pen is the thing of nightmares. All right, Jim gets pinged down to 2. Going to draw the last card of his game. Yeah, there's too many creatures on Jamie's board now. Going to make Lodestone unblockable, take 5, go down to 2. And there's a game. It is a Tangle Wire. Okay, so Jamie takes Jim out in the finals. He is the victor of the tournament. Jim one turn away from casting a Canoptic Scarab Swarm. But congratulations to Jamie. He took it all. And he is now very well positioned in the Legacy of the North. I think we're in the 3rd season. But yeah, he is on his way to the Spring Invitational. Thank you guys so much for watching. And like I said before, if you guys didn't see my announcement video, go check it out. Links in the description. If you haven't seen that yet, I think the order is I'm going to be covering the 1K first and then the Invitational after, because I'm going to put a lot more effort into editing and getting the Invitational up. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this run, and we will see you soon.